Hi, it's Thomas. This is the course Business Strategy, and today's topic is leadership. We can begin our discussion of leadership by comparing management and leadership. Three good points here to make the comparison. Managers have subordinates, leaders have followers. The difference between a subordinate and a follower is a subordinate is in some way coerced or required to follow, whereas the leader's followers aren't coerced. They simply, of their own will, believe in the leader, follow the leader, and work with the leader. Next, managers focus on transactions, leaders focus on transformation. So here we're looking at a different scale perspective. Looking at a transaction is sort of a micro level perspective, and someone does need to pay attention to the details. Someone does need to be managing the transactions. But leadership is a much higher level. Leaders are looking at a bigger picture, a longer term perspective, and they're looking beyond individual transactions to see how one transaction after the other, one decision on top of another leads to transformation. And finally, managers focus on work, leaders focus on people. Here the idea is, of course, to get work done, we need to work with people and support people, but managers are focusing on the end result. The work leads to a particular result for the organization. Leaders instead are thinking not just about the result or the end, but they're also thinking about the means to that end. The means to the end of the work result, the means are people. And people have needs, they have concerns, they have goals of their own, they have desires that relate to their personality, their interests, their families, etc. And leaders understand that, and they're aware not just of working towards the organization's objectives, but also supporting the organization's organisms, or the people. The people are what drive the organization to success, and the leader is aware of the importance of the people. Let's now look at the topic of strategic leadership. What does it mean to lead strategically? Here we have several points. This is not exhaustive, but these are key points that will give us a good idea of the meaning of strategic leadership. First, distribute responsibility. One person can't do everything. If one person is trying to do everything, then not only are they overworked, but the organization is limited in its potential for success because many people with skills, abilities, ideas aren't given the opportunity to use those skills and abilities and ideas. By distributing responsibility, everyone in the organization has the opportunity to participate in and contribute to the success of the organization. Be honest and open. Hiding problems or minimizing issues isn't a means of strategic leadership. Being open with people, sharing information, letting everyone in the organization know where things stand, if there are challenges, what they are, how the organization is addressing them. This is a component of strategic leadership. Next, create multiple paths for idea sharing. Instead of, we looked at in the strategy implementation lecture, the idea of a horizontal communication structure. Instead of limiting communication to a vertical model, from the boss down, from the top down, opening up the communication model so that more people are communicating with each other in the organization. This allows for the movement of ideas. This allows for creativity to move from one part of the organization to another, from one individual of the organization to another, from one team in the organization to another. So multiple paths to share ideas, multiple paths of communication is an important component to leading strategically. Next, make it safe to fail. If employees, or even managers for that matter, are concerned about retribution for making a mistake or for trying an idea that didn't work out, then the company, the organization, isn't going to try new things. They're not going to be willing to take any risks. And in order to succeed, an organization needs to, within reason, in a managed manner, needs to be willing to take risks, try out new ideas, try out new concepts. They won't all work. Sometimes an organization will fail. That means that an idea didn't work, and that means the person behind the idea had an anticipation, had a vision or a perspective of what would happen as a result of trying something new. That didn't happen. So the organization needs to allow for failure, make it safe to fail, so that people will try new things, take some risks, and that will enable the company to continue to grow and succeed. Continuing, enable experience-based learning. People need to have the opportunity to learn on the job. They need to have the opportunity to try new things, to develop their skills. There's a concept known as the Peter Principle, which is that when someone rises up in the ranks to management, they're moving out of their area of expertise, and because they succeeded in an area in which they were strong, they were promoted to a management level, and they weren't necessarily ready for that management level, and they eventually fail. By providing someone with an experience-based learning opportunity, maybe shadowing a manager before moving into that role, so they have a real idea of what that new role means. And it's not just moving up into management. It could be moving parallel into a new division or into a new function. If someone has the opportunity to practice before they make their final move, that's good for the individual, that's good for the organization. Next, hire for strategic diversity. An organization shouldn't have a group of people that all think the same way, that all have the same background, that are from the same nationality or from the same race or, of course, of the same gender. There needs to be diversity. Diversity is strategic. It brings in new backgrounds, new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of addressing challenges. And so leading strategically, a component of leading strategically is a diverse workforce, a diverse group of people in the organization. And finally, a strategic leader will take time to reflect. Being a leader isn't about doing. Sometimes a leader needs to stop, reflect, see what has worked, see what hasn't worked, learn from what has worked and do more of the same, learn from what hasn't worked, what changes need to be made, how should we do things differently in the future. So taking time to reflect is as important as taking action in an organization. And finally, let's look at the concept of managing change. We talked about change in the lecture on strategy implementation and strategic control. Change, in one way or another, sooner or later is going to come to every organization, and part of strategic leadership is managing change. Again, a list of concepts, not exhaustive, but good points supporting the idea of managing change. First, lead with the culture. If we can do something that matches, that fits with the corporate culture, the organizational culture, it's always going to be more successful. In general, people are averse to change. Organizations are averse to change. So the smoother we can make that process, the easier we can make that process, the more likely we are to experience a successful change transition. So matching with, harmonizing with the culture is a key component of successfully managing change. Next, start at the top. Don't expect everybody to do something that the leaders in the organization aren't willing to do. The top of the organization, the senior management of the organization, should be the first to begin to change when there's a need for change in the organization. And then work down, involve every layer, not just the senior managers, not just the managers as a general group, but everybody in the organization needs to understand what the change is, why it's necessary, and that for the good of the organization, the change needs to happen. Everybody needs to get involved. Continuing, connect the rational and emotional, stating that we need to make a change because of a change in the industry, a change with the competition, a change in the external environment. It's factual information that people can understand, but they won't necessarily connect with. If we can make a connection that has emotion, that will connect the people at an emotional level to what we're doing, perhaps why we're doing it, why this will be good, not for the profit or the bottom line, but for the people in the organization. That emotional connection will drive people to pursue the change, even though, again, change isn't something that people generally are looking forward to participating in. The emotional connection will encourage them to participate in the change process. Change behavior now. Don't wait. Once there is a situation in which an organization realizes they need a change, then the change needs to begin now. It's important not to put off the change. Once there's an acknowledgement, once there's a realization that change is necessary, the change should begin at that point. Next, engage informal leaders. We mentioned informal leaders in the lecture on strategy implementation and strategic control. There are formal leaders in an organization. They're known by their titles. They're official leaders, usually senior management or other manager level employees. There are also informal leaders, and they lead by influence. They lead by their confidence. They lead by their charisma. They lead by setting an example that people want to follow. So getting the informal leaders involved in the change management process will lead to successful change. And finally, assess and adapt. Once we begin to change, maybe something doesn't result that we expected, or something changes more than we needed, or doesn't change as much as we needed. So we need to assess and adapt. Do we see the result we expected? Are we getting the result that we wanted? If not, then we can make a change to more effectively manage the change. This concludes our lecture on leadership. As always, we'll work through a case study in class to apply these concepts in a real-world setting, and I look forward to seeing you then.